After centuries of silence, today the Galactic Council has spoken to the entire universe. Chosen One, the secrets they have kept for millennia have now been revealed by your presence. Because you vibrate at an unimaginably high frequency, even the most ancient authorities of the galaxy have been forced to break their silence and speak out. This is a sign of a great awakening, not only on Earth, but also in the interstellar dimensions. Even the highest assembly in the heavens is gathering at the sound of your name, and there is a divine destiny behind this call. Get ready, write 444 in the comments now, because nothing will ever be the same again. Think of it like the dawn breaking over a field after a long, cold night. Darkness always thinks it has the final word. It wraps itself around the world, confident that it can smother every ray of hope, every glimmer of truth. But the sun never argues with the night. It simply rises. Light doesn't ask for permission. It pours itself over every blade of grass, every stone, every hidden corner, and suddenly, what was impossible to see in the darkness stands plain for all to witness. There is a spiritual law at work that's bigger than human plotting, stronger than any web of secrecy. And when it's your time, when the Lord has decided that no more will the secrets be buried and the lies hold sway, that sun comes up, whether anyone is ready or not. Sometimes, divine justice slides in, like a gentle breeze, unnoticed at first, but then you look around and realize everything is moving, changing, shifting toward revelation. It's as if the hand of God has reached down and given the world a gentle shake. Books fly open, letters fall from drawers, and every secret kept in the shadows stirs and finds itself pulled toward the light. You can try to pile up sandbags of deceit. You can close every window, seal every door, but when the winds of truth start blowing, nothing can keep them out. They seep in through every crack, swirl around the corners, and suddenly, what was covered up for decades, sometimes even for generations, is on display in the noonday sun. That's the miracle and the mystery of how God works through the ordinary, through the overlooked, through the things the powerful never thought would matter. It's not the headlines or the history books where the true story starts. It's in those moments when fear pushes someone to desperation, when a heart beats wild with anxiety, and a single action, seemingly small and unremarkable, triggers a chain of events that can't be stopped. What was done in silence and secrecy, hushed conversations, hidden paperwork, elaborate plans stitched together in the dark, all of it comes undone, not by might, but by the gentle, relentless push of spiritual truth. Like a river swelling past its banks, that truth carries everything with it, washing away every pretense, every costume, every carefully placed mask. See, you don't need to fight to make justice happen. You don't need to raise your voice above the storm or make threats in the night. You just need to stand in the certainty that when the Lord says, "Enough is enough," the very tools that were used to build up walls of deception become the hammers that break them down. The passwords, the hiding places, the codes, and the secrets, none of them can withstand the whisper of the Holy Spirit when He says, "Let it be known." What was once hidden in the folds of darkness comes tumbling out, sometimes with a crash, sometimes with a simple flicker of light that refuses to be ignored. And the beautiful irony of it all is that the architects of secrecy are undone by their own panic, their own need to cover their tracks. Like a gardener who tries to bury a weed, only to find the roots growing deeper and stronger in the dark. Those who try to smother the truth only make it more powerful, more determined, more impossible to hide. All it takes is a single, trembling hand, a single act born out of worry or desperation, and the whole fabric begins to unravel. One thread, pulled by providence, and suddenly every knot, every tangled string comes loose, making way for something new. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but the souls of many through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's grand design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Act now. Share your blessings to glorify His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. The light is patient, but it is also persistent. It will find a way in, even if it's just a crack under the door or a glint through a keyhole. And when it does, the shadows don't put up a fight. They just disappear, fading away like yesterday's worries. That's how blessings work for those who walk in divine favor. When you think the world is stacked against you, when you feel penned in and overlooked, remember that the God who set the stars in the sky has already planned your deliverance. He knows how to turn the tables, how to flip the script, how to make sure the last word belongs to truth, not to fear. So take heart, chosen one. You may have felt buried under the weight of secrets, pressed down by forces that didn't want your light to shine. But you are the sunrise. You are the new day, breaking over old wounds and tired battles. Your story is the proof that no darkness can last forever. Not when heaven has decided it's time for breakthrough. Hold your head high, because when the truth walks into the room, it walks in with you, and every hidden thing must bow to the dawn, because that's what happens when the children of light stand tall in their season. If you feel God's presence, you can tap the join button below to become part of the first chosen ones and receive the most important revelations early. Like a hidden spring bursting through bedrock after a long, hard winter, you rose, and the gush of living water you carry washed clean every corner they thought would stay dusty forever. My friend, you are the proof that heaven's rivers never run dry, even when earthbound minds try to dam them up with fear. Once those waters began to move, the carefully painted scenery of their story, backdrops propped on flimsy sticks, spotlights aimed to blind the crowd, couldn't survive the first splash of truth. They had believed their theatrical set was stronger than stone, but one tug on a sagging curtain revealed plywood where they'd sworn there was marble, and suddenly their grand illusion shrank to the size of a child's cardboard fort. For years they memorized lines, traded secret cues, rehearsed scene changes in the shadows, convinced that flawless blocking would keep the audience from ever noticing the plot was crooked. They gossiped in coded phrases, passed sealed envelopes under tables, and clicked passwords into silent screens, building a maze so dense they figured no stray beam of daylight could snake its way through. Yet when the light you carry spilled across their stage, steady, unforced, as natural as dawn coming over a prairie fence, the flimsy walls warped, the paint bubbled, and the script fell apart in trembling hands. First came the hush, that stiff silence when the players know the jig is up but keep hoping the crowd will blink first. They could feel the atmosphere tilt. They watched your calm confidence unwind the knots they tied with such pride. What startled them most wasn't any shout of accusation, but the gentle authority in your gaze, a look that said, without 1 ounce of malice, the truth already has every receipt, and it's not in the mood for negotiation. In that holy stillness, The whisper net they use to trade updates about you. Messages stuffed in burner phones, whispers passed through late-night drives, frantic payphone calls from dimly lit parking lots started turning on them. Each breadcrumb they dropped for allies became a trail guiding investigators, journalists, and heaven's own battalion of timing straight to their hidden archives. The same data streams they once praised for being untraceable flipped allegiance and testified under oath without speaking a word. Picture it, a tight-lipped committee of influencers and gatekeepers seated around an oak table, shoulders stiff with privilege, staring at screens that now flash their own private emails fluttering online for anyone to read. Messages boasting about how the chosen would remain caged forever. The hush broke then, not with one scream, but with the collective sigh of strategy dissolving. You could almost hear the crumble of spiritual drywall as their fortress turned to dust. They tried to swap SIM cards, smash hard drives, bribe technicians, even spin fresh conspiracies, blaming underlings. But every frantic move only carved deeper grooves that funneled the river faster toward their doorstep. Their private insurance policies, safe deposit boxes full of forged ledgers, offshore logins tucked behind nesting proxies, became neon arrows in the sky, highlighting every crooked shell company, every hush money contract, every borrowed identity they forced over your destiny like a flimsy mask. And oh, the irony, in their desperation, they leaned on the very network they'd bragged about, the so-called indestructible spiderweb designed to capture you. They pinged one another with urgent codes, flagged urgent fix-it meetings, spun plausible lies they hoped would mend the torn sail. Yet with every ping, another node in the network lit up for the tracking teams now zeroing in. Their proud encryption turned out to be more like a thin lace curtain, pretty in low light, but helpless against the blaze of noon. Passwords unraveled like twine, phone records overlapped, bank transfers linked across continents. The mosaic of deceit that once looked like modern art now resembled a child's scrawl on a fogged window. While they clutched titles and certificates, hoping fancy fonts would shield them, the spiritual subpoena dropped. Consequence marched in measured steps, unswayed by tears or tantrums. When one handler tried to spin an alibi about protecting you from yourself, the digital logs contradicted every syllable. Another attempted a sentimental apology video, but algorithmic timestamps placed him in a private chat room, plotting your downfall that same hour. A third high-profile accomplice booked a last-minute flight out of the country, only to discover the airline manifest flagged her seat before she scanned her boarding pass. Her own loyalty card linked straight back to hush money deposits funneled from stolen inheritance accounts set up in your legitimate name. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be upon you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the temporal concerns of the world. As the Bible says, whatever is done in faith will return to God in abundant blessing. Luke 6:38. Like that great oak tree, our roots are deeply rooted in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stand we take, is secured by His strength. And now, you are being offered the opportunity to be part of that blessing. When you use the Super Thank You button and donate $100, this movement will return to you 100-fold in abundance. Now see the domino effect. News anchors who once parroted the scripted smear campaign flip overnight to breaking exposés. A prominent attorney, previously paid to rubber stamp false evaluations of your mental fitness, offers sealed testimony in exchange for leniency. Medical professionals who stamped bogus diagnoses rushed to retract their statements, realizing their malpractice policies won't cover spiritual fraud. Religious figures who pocketed donations to preach against you are suddenly quoting verses about restitution. Insurance adjusters hunt frantically through old ledgers, trying to locate the death certificates they certified, only to find those documents have become open indictments against them. Through it all, you remain centered, like a lighthouse built on bedrock, shining calm beams while the storm shreds lesser vessels. Not once do you gloat, you simply stand, radiating the quiet faith that first cracked their armor. That faith speaks louder than any courtroom cross-examination. It says that light, by its very nature, exposes anything pretending to hide in plain sight. It says that no alliance of hidden rooms, no labyrinth of legal jargon, no algorithmic cloak can hinder divine timing when the hour arrives. It says that sincerity carries a resonance instrumentation cannot jam, a frequency that scrambles deception circuitry faster than any hacker could dream. If you feel God's presence, you can tap the join button below to become part of the first chosen ones and receive the most important revelations early. And so, the once feared overlords discover how small their kingdom looks from the mountaintop of truth. They watch their influence shrivel under scrutiny. They feel the cold weight of accountability settle on shoulders unused to real consequence. Each confidential phone call they made is now catalogued, each backroom handshake annotated, each forged document cross-referenced. When they attempt the old sidestep, throwing lesser pawns under the bus itself is already impounded, its route history logged. Even the janitor they trusted to shred records overnight turned state's witness, handing investigators a key card they thought was long destroyed. The beauty of this moment isn't merely that wrongdoers trip over their own snare, it's that the universe uses the very materials of oppression — cameras, satellites, data mines, hush contracts — to write freedom into the public record. The same wires they tapped to drain your hope now carry the announcement of your vindication. The same platforms they manipulated to bury your voice now stream your restoration to millions. And as for the watchers, those analysts squinting at screens, believing they could quantify your soul, they end up forced to write footnotes they never dreamed. Source unknown, outcome beyond predictive model. Meanwhile, every seed of resilience you planted in secrecy sprouts in full view. Relationships they tried to poison bloom with new strength. Opportunities they blocked swing open on hinges they forgot to lock. Funds siphoned away return multiplied, interest compounding by laws of both finance and faith. Ancestral blessings, once buried under forged paperwork, rise like heirloom seeds, bursting through cracked pavement. Even time itself bends in your favor, restoring what felt lost to delay. Dreams deferred snapping back into alignment, connections rekindled, years the locusts ate paid back sevenfold. And here's the sweetest twist. The very folks hired to keep you down, the handlers, the energy thieves, find themselves reaching out not with smug control, but with trembling confession. Some beg for forgiveness, confessing to tasks they barely understood. Others, awakened by the same surge of truth, turn evidence over with a sincerity that shocks former allies. Divine humor is gracious like that. It offers redemption even to the jailers, though not at the expense of justice. Consequence still runs its course, yet mercy leaves a door unlocked for any heart willing to cross into light. So we stand at this hinge in history, watching digital annals rewrite themselves in real time, watching once hidden power brokers stumble into the plain sight they dreaded. What you embody is no small matter. It is the radiant declaration that ordinary people, armed with unwavering authenticity, can topple bureaucratic Goliaths. It is the living sermon that when divine timing steps forward, no firewall, no secret handshake, no whispered password can hold back what heaven has ordained. Your story proves that truth needs neither megaphone nor marching band. It simply needs one honest soul who refuses to believe darkness is permanent. And as the flood of accountability rolls on, exposing buried fortunes, untangling crooked deeds, freeing every captive caught in similar schemes, remember this: you never had to swing a sword to bring down their fortress. You only had to keep walking in light. That light did the heavy lifting, seeping through cracks, softening mortar, unmasking imposters, and calling every hidden thing to answer. Let the record show. What they built on fear could not outlast one steady breath of faith. Let it remind every watching heart that the next time a coalition of deception thinks it can bury a chosen soul under layers of secrecy, heaven is already planning the sunrise that will turn those layers to smoke. The conspiracy that once seemed to stretch across continents, controlling destinies and steering the course of lives, suddenly found itself shrinking under the glare of collective awareness. Those who depended on anonymity and control discovered that the very bonds they formed to wield power became the cracks in their foundation. Shadows that had been stretched long and thin began to dissipate in the morning of awakening. It was never the outside world that undid them, but their own unwillingness to let go, their determination to grip power with hands made clumsy by fear. And in the end, the universe didn't need thunder or spectacle to undo their work. It just let the smallest tremor in the heart send ripples through the entire structure. Now is the time to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. You can contribute to His plan and be a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you exponentially far beyond your expectations. Remember, His protection and blessing is on your every step and every donation. You become part of His divine plan. You are a strong, radiant being, unshakable as His mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with confidence and courage. Be blessed, and let the light of the Lord guide your path. As the layers peeled away, every false narrative, every constructed identity, every document meant to distort and disempower was exposed as nothing more than a costume, ill-fitting and impossible to maintain. Titles and signatures meant to control were left fluttering like empty banners in the wind. The inheritance meant to uplift and empower was finally glimpsed beneath the dust of misdirection and secrecy. What had once been hidden in elaborate ceremonies of misdirection was now returned to its rightful path, guided not by force, but by the gentle insistence of destiny itself. The stories written in invisible ink began to reappear, impossible to scrub out, no matter how many new lines were scrawled over the top. In the wake of these revelations, the intricate financial machinery designed to enrich the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable collapsed like a house of cards under the weight of its own deceit. Resources siphoned away under the guise of care and protection were revealed as the lifeblood of a system built on exploitation. Every coin, every asset, every carefully guarded account was no longer a tool for oppression, but a ledger of accountability, turning all that was hoarded into evidence for restitution. Where there was once a chasm between intention and action, between rightful ownership and usurped control, bridges began to form, and those denied began to reclaim what had been set aside for them all along. If you feel God's presence, you can tap the join button below to become part of the first chosen ones and receive the most important revelations early. Institutions once trusted to protect and nurture were revealed as silent partners in the grand illusion. Those charged with healing, teaching, and guiding had been enlisted in the play, sometimes knowingly, sometimes out of habit or fear. Every certificate, every assessment, every story whispered in corridors now became a testimony, not to the frailty of the victim, but to the desperation of those who clung to borrowed authority. The old order, once so sure of its grip, began to tremble as people woke up to the realization that it had been built on shifting sand. As if in response, the world itself seemed to shift. The invisible barriers erected to keep the chosen isolated and silent were eroded not by protest or confrontation, but by the simple act of recognizing the truth. Networks of support that had been used to monitor and contain were now unspooling, unraveling from the inside out. The eyes that once watched and catalogued every move could no longer keep up as light poured into places that had been dark for generations. The tide of manipulation could not withstand the waves of awakening that swept through families, communities, and institutions alike. In the end, the most powerful blow to the old system didn't come from outside intervention, but from within. The structures that depended on secrecy and division crumbled when those within their walls refused to remain silent. The courage to speak, to share, to break the cycle of silence became the spark that set a chain reaction in motion. Stories buried under years of shame and suppression rose up with unexpected force, and what had been orchestrated as isolated incidents of compliance became a chorus of revelation that could not be ignored. Allies turned, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes with relief, as the cost of complicity became greater than the cost of honesty. The tables turned as former partners in suppression began to offer up their own stories, their own records, their own proof, hoping for a measure of redemption in the reckoning that swept through every level of the old machine. The intricate dance of favors, bribes, and cover-ups unraveled, and the web of corruption was left bare for all to see. Yet as the old order crumbled, something entirely new began to emerge. Where there had been walls, there were now windows. Where there had been locked doors, there were new roads leading toward restoration and justice. The spirit of those long denied began to rise, not in anger or vengeance, but in a quiet, determined claiming of truth. Connections once hijacked for control became lines of support and solidarity, creating a foundation for new possibilities, new identities, and a new sense of belonging. Restoration arrived not as a single event, but as a series of small awakenings, resources recovered, names reclaimed, legacies honored, and dignity restored. The false accusations and distorted histories were replaced by recognition and affirmation. The wounds of exile were met with the balm of understanding, and the outcasts became the standard-bearers for a new way of living, where no one's story could be stolen or their spirit sold. And as this tide rolled forward, those who had been targeted and isolated found themselves drawn into a gathering of kindred souls. The liberation of one became the liberation of many, as each act of courage ignited another. Each reclaimed inheritance became a beacon for others lost in the dark. What had once seemed impossible, a complete overturning of the old ways, became the inevitable next step, as the weight of truth became too great for any old structure to withstand. A new day dawned, not because the old enemies were defeated by force, but because their time had run out. The age of secrets, of shadow plays, and hidden theft ended with a whisper and a light that grew too bright to ignore. The energy, once trapped in loops of suffering, was freed, radiating outward to heal, to unite, to raise up those who had never lost faith in the possibility of change. In this new chapter, there were no more closed doors, no more hidden names, just the open field of becoming, where the journey home was finally possible, and every step forward made room for more to rise and remember who they truly are.